Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business. Looking forward to talking with founder and CEO of Astor Realty Capital, Joe Berko. Joe, it's great to connect with you, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Same here, John. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, please. I'm looking forward to it. So I want to start, Joe. Joe, every time I'm a business coach and I work with successful people all over the globe who are successful but stuck, and I get them unstuck. And one of the things I loved about your bio on LinkedIn is it says real estate investor, entrepreneur, teacher. And so I want to kind of tap into the teacher of you for a moment. Where do you see as a teacher people get stuck the most, and how as a teacher do you get them unstuck?
Okay. So the concept of a teacher, all of us are teachers, and there's everyone where we can learn from. You get stuck when you stop learning, right? I think that's the first place. If you think that you're the smartest person in the room, you're already making a huge mistake, right? There's always somebody to learn from. There's always something new to learn from. Your experience is your own and doesn't represent, the universe of experience. Your opinions are exactly the same. They're your own. So, I love teaching because that's a fantastic way for me to learn. If you think about, most learning is being done in a settings that is, either a classroom or a boardroom setting or things of that nature. And so, if you're essentially are out there and you're open to understanding the experience levels and to truly listen how others are operating and what they're bringing to the table, then you can learn a lot. I start my day by reading various articles. I zoom out just to see what's happening on a global scale and zoom more in to understand where we are in the environment, whether it is business or political environment, and then start zooming much more micro level. And I bring this to my work, right? I'm an individual that spends a lot of time putting money out, investment capital out to various real estate projects. And so you don't live in a vacuum, right? And you don't live in a bubble. You have to take all those things into account.
Yeah. I love that. I love that answer. I, like you, am obsessed with learning, and I learn a lot when I teach. And I think I know when to be the teacher and when to be the student. And that's one of the things I love about this podcast is I get to be kind of both and more in kind of this of a student. And so, just one more question on this. How do you kind of know when to be, you personally know, and how do you coach others when to be the student, when to be the teacher?
Well, I've taken the teaching concept during the pandemic. I've created this amazing course called the Real Estate Masterclass. And of course, I had a lot more time on my hands. We were a lot less busy in the middle of 2020. And so I put together a learning system that is really, I would even say, somewhat revolutionary. As I mentioned, typical learning is done in classrooms, right? Your instructor, your professor might be somebody that's coming with absolutely zero street experience, right? Maybe all textbook learning, and so you're sort of like gaining information from that. And there's a lot to be said about that. That's pretty good. Other places you'll have somebody who's coming with a lot of experience, but again, that experience is very unique to that particular individuals, and so that's what you're here to absorb. So what I've done is I said I'd like to have a comprehensive course, a course that brings together the experience level of all the various teachers that I can bring in my field. It's real estate, and so I've curated a course that had 16 chapters about real estate investments and development. And I said, who's the best that I can find to fill these one class at a time in those various disciplines within the scope of commercial real estate investments, development, and so on. And so I've approached the best in class that I could find, the biggest names in the industry, the kind of people you see front page and on the Globes and the Wall Street Journal and so on, and got them to participate and to run a particular class. So whatever it was about how to understand market cycles, whether it was about valuation, whether it was about how to buy the largest real estate projects in the history of real estate and sell it right in the perfect timing. So we got everybody to sit down in different areas. And so our students were able to get a fantastic view,
Yeah.
front row view to some of the best in the industry, focusing on the kind of like the areas that they excel or the strong suits. It wasn't enough for me. You would think that that would be pretty cool, but it wasn't enough for me. And so I said, I'd like to also have practical applications. And so we've created, with the recorded course, we've also added an additional layer, that has ongoing conversations with the very same teachers. So they would come in and visit various classes and would have conversations with students,
I love it.
option to run questions by them, but it wasn't enough still. And so I've added one other layer, and I said, I'd like to see the practical application. So if we are in a course of real estate investment and development, I wish for each and every one of the students to go out on a local scale and find a development site or a building to acquire and put together an entire presentation based on all the stuff that we're learning, project by project, week by week. The individuals that were in our classrooms were gaining valuable information from best in class. Would have the chance to ask questions, either myself as an instructor or some of the lecturer, and also apply it specifically to their region, to their area, and be able to put together a comprehensive presentation. I think that that's where a lot of teaching is being missed today.
I agree. I love that. That sounds amazing. Where can people sign up for that class?
Well, we've taken a stop. We've had 4 courses. We've taken a little bit of a stop, and right now in conversation with a major university that loved us and wants to acquire it and remorph it and make it their own. So at the moment, we're sort of like put a stop. We ran it for about 2.5 years. And I think we're about to push it into the next level. So at the time being, that's where we are.
That's great. That's exciting. I agree with you. There's so many ways. So I'm a business coach. I work with solopreneurs to Fortune companies, but I also have a platform for 20 somethings called Launch 3. And we have live speakers every Wednesday. I'd love to have you come speak. We have live speakers every Wednesday. We do stuff on Monday, Tuesday. We do our best to really get pretty granular to help them. So I love the way this was great. I appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
And thanks for taking the extra step to share. It's like, I think we all have a responsibility to teach and to share and to provide great content to help others rise. So that's great. Congratulations on that. I'm excited to hear more about it. So I do want to touch on one thing that you mentioned, which I think is really, really important, the power of listening. And I think a lot of times people don't listen to what the other person's saying. You have built a tremendous business. You have a $2.27 billion portfolio, 3.7 million square feet, over close to 3,000 units. And there's a lot of power in listening and listening to what's being said and what's not being said. And so in your within your journey, what's one thing that you would suggest to people to become a better listener?
So listening I think it's a big trait. I'll take you to the origin of where I developed my listening. So for many years, I'm in the industry for about 28 years, but for many years, I was acting as an advisor, as a commercial real estate broker, focusing mainly on investment sales, structured finance, capital raise, and syndications. Probably done over 300 transactions in my career, maybe 400 transactions in my career, where I was sort of like the linchpin between buyers and sellers, bankers and borrowers, buyer's attorney, seller's attorney, and everything in between. And so in a market like New York City, it's a fast-paced market, lots of egos, lots of personalities, big deals, big transactions. There's a lot of emotion that goes on. And so as the person in the middle, you'll always hear the conversation because they'll come to you as the negotiation goes about in order to get transactions done. And you get to see the best in people. And unfortunately, you get to see the worst in people as well. And so, you have to pay a lot of attention. People will tell you everything that you need to know. They'll tell you everything. And a lot of times when we listen, we finish the sentences of people in our heads, right? Somebody starts saying something, you're not quite clear. You might finish this information in your head. You sort of like explain to yourself what was being said. So that's the first mistake, I think, in the space of listening. If you're not clear about something, learn to ask. Learn to ask the second conversation, what do you mean by that? What does it look like to you? We forget to do that. Now, a lot of times during conversations, we don't listen. We are already preparing our answer. That's not listening, right? That's not listening at all. That's really listening to yourself and trying to look good by coming up with an answer or coming up with an answer on the spot. It's extremely, extremely important to really, really understand what's being said in the conversation. There's always gaps, okay? And it's okay, and it should be. You should ask, tell me, what do you mean by that? What does it mean like for you? It's also very important to relate to people. And if you think about neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, right? I'm sure you've heard about it, Jon. People are divided to various groups, right? We have the auditories, we have the visuals, we have the kinesthetics. They communicate differently. And each one has a different way to relate to certain things. And in order to create a conversation that flows well, you want to be able to relate to the individuals you're speaking with, right? So if you're talking to kinesthetics versus talking to auditors or visuals, you want to communicate a little bit different. Then the noise level starts dying out, and then you'll have a much, much clearer conversation. I'll just add one more sentence, not to leave the audience confused in any way, shape, or form. Individuals relate and see the world very differently from one another. All right, it's your job as a professional to come in and step into their world. It's much easier to step into their world than to try to bring them into yours. Sometimes you always have this back and forth, but you really, in order to understand somebody, in order to truly listen, you want to step into their world. So identifying who you're speaking with and what sort of a individual is in front of you is extremely important and really very basic. One example would be the sort of language that that individual use as he or she communicates, right? So for example, an auditory individual will say things like, or sentences like, I hear you, I hear exactly what you mean. And you know that his world is more on the auditory side, and then you'll act accordingly, right? The pace, the speed of speech, and all those different things differs between auditories. Visuals tends to speak very, very quickly. Visuals will say, I see exactly what you mean, right? The world to them, the process goes through visuals, right? So you want to have a lot more visuals, a lot more pictures if you're pitching a presentation, and less focus on maybe on numbers and figures at that early stage. And then, of course, you have the kinesthetics, which requires a lot more attention and a lot more patience because it takes them longer to process things. It takes them a while before they'll feel. Okay, everything with them is I feel you. Like it's all a lot more personal to them. And so those are the individuals that will pay a lot more attention to your Excel sheets and stuff like that. So you really want to know who you're speaking with. Try not to cut sentences off, and don't finish them in your head. You'll notice that you don't always understand what the other side is fully trying to convey. So learn to ask questions. 30% of your time you should listen. 30% of your time you should speak, 70% you should talk. So I know, I'm not sure I said it the right way. Pardon me.
No, you're perfect. I mean, and the only thing I would add to that is, and I loved everything you just said, is the person who asks the question controls the conversation. And so there's a lot of power in questions. And, a lot of times salespeople will say, well, what do I have to say? What do I have to tell them? Well, it's what do you have to ask? And so if you really kind of take your whole game to being and growing your skill set of listening and asking questions, there's so many doors that will open. That was great, Joe. I appreciate that.
Sure.
I want to talk a little bit about business. I do these mini business courses. I was in commercial real estate for 12, 13 years. I loved that space. I was a broker. I ran an office, and I loved it. You have built again, $2.27 billion portfolio, 3.7 million square feet. there's a lot of people who want to get into the space. There's a lot of people who are in the space and want to grow in the space. And
Right.
so what would your three kind of I don't want to say best pieces of advice, but three pieces of advice, three fundamental pieces of advice that you would give people who want to start and or grow their commercial real estate business?
Great question. I think that the most important thing for any individual is to fully understand what's their value proposition to the market. What is your strong suit? What is it that the market or your client really need? It used to be back in the day, as I said, I'm doing it for many years. It used to be back in the days, coming up with information, coming up with some analysis would have been super paramount. But we're now living in an age now with billions of dollars spent by Silicon Valley and trying to disrupt and actually disrupting the commercial real estate industry and the real estate industry in general. So information has become less available, less proprietary to what we used to have back in the day. Brokers used to have access to all things. I sometimes say today that people today have access to all things, but understand the value of almost nothing. So bringing more information to an already inundated market is extremely diminished. It wasn't the case back in the day. Today, value add proposition, if your personality is such that you're able to come in and break through and create relationships and break through the ice and break through the walls that people put up between yourself as a salesperson and what is it that they need, then you already have the upper hand. You have to be likable. People like to do business with people like themselves. You have to be likable. That's the first thing. Second of all, you want to bring value, right? What is the value proposition that you bring? We obviously, as brokers, maybe as investors, we always have somebody that we want to talk to in order to convince them to do certain things. Way back in the day, is on the brokerage side of the business, I would come in and bring a piece of information that I would consider that maybe a lot of people have overlooked. Maybe I knew something, right? Also, it's a very inefficient market. And so my conversations and my contacts would have been my strong suit because I would gain the trust of the folks that would hire me to represent them. And I would do a very, very methodical work in order to sell a transaction or raise capital and so on. So the first thing is understand what it is that you have. What's your value proposition? The second thing is, you're working in a very fast-paced market. It's a highly competitive market, whether it is in New York, Los Angeles, Miami. The only way for you to kind of like be ahead of the curve is really work hard. It's actually work hard. There's no shortcuts, right? There's no shortcuts. We've pivoted from the brokerage 8 years ago, from the brokerage into the private equity, but there's no shortcuts, right? We've changed the dance where before we used to kind of like, try to convince sellers to buy property. Now it's actually us that needs to be convinced to acquire those properties. But you got to be a very hard worker and you got to be very methodical. Really be super organized and very, very methodical. Spend the time necessary to walk the geographical location that you are choosing to work in. Understand the locations, understand who the players are, and make sure you create those relationships and do it on a very systematic basis. So that's a very important thing. And ultimately, keep a good name and a reputation because that's your calling card. If you say something to somebody, own your word. Own your word. That's the one thing. That's the one thing we take with us. Anywhere, it can strip us from everything. It can strip us from our money. It can strip us from the cars. You can strip us from our assets. You can't strip us from our word. It's something that belongs to you. So own it. If you mean it, say it. And if something happens and you couldn't stay true to your word because you wish for something to happen, but didn't quite happen, then own it. Okay, be the first one to say, I've tried, it didn't work. I'm really sorry. Let's see how we can correct it, or let's go our separate ways. So own your word. Make sure that your reputation stays intact.
Yeah. I love that. Right. All we have is our name, our brand, our intellectual capital, our word. I love that. And there's no shortcut to hard work.
No
There's no shortcuts and there's no going viral and there's no, it just is grind it out every single day. And
Absolutely.
consistency compounds, Joe. I talk about that all the time with people I coach. It's like,
Hmm.
small things done consistently compounds. Big things done once in a while, they don't compound.
That's right.
So it's great. It's great. So let's talk a little bit more about you. So you've been an entrepreneur for over 25 years, and not only now, but I think always, but more so now, I get the vibe that everybody is trying to kind of figure out how to tap into their own inner entrepreneur, whether that's part time, quarter time, whether that's building something on the side.
Hmm.
Everybody's looking for another level of freedom. And so I want to kind of tap into, before you were an entrepreneur, or, before you knew what the word entrepreneur was when you were 10 years old, or,
Hmm. Hmm.
anything in between. I want to do kind of three things that you would guide people to as far as a mini life business course to tap into their inner entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
Because you've seemed to, in connecting with you and just kind of through your team and your bios, you've seemed to really connect into the inner entrepreneur. And I think people are craving for that. So what's three things that you would guide them to get there on their own?
First of all, you're right. Taking me back to me being 10 years old. Me being 10 years old, I was washing cars on a weekend, right? My
Yeah.
neighbor's cars on a weekend, so I could make some money. And then eventually, I was selling some of this and selling some of that. I was always out there trying to do something. I had this fire and this unexplainable fire, and unexplainable need to always do something. So I think that that's maybe the first trait of an entrepreneur. Secondly, I have no fear, right? So I have no no second thought or second conscious about how to get what I need to get or where I need to get. It's just very very driven individuals. It is not to say that I don't find myself sitting on the side of the road and thinking to myself, am I on the right path and why things are not working out for me? Yes, you're going to have this internal struggles and some doubts and questions. It's part of being human, right? It's how we're built. But if you set yourself a path, stay on the path. There will be times that you'll feel like you're off the road, but stay on the road. Extremely,
Yeah.
extremely important. It's a long path, and don't wait for that moment in time where you'll reach this plateau or that plateau, because the road is what matters. It's how you walk on it, and what you do on a day in, the day out is what
Yeah.
matters. Ultimately, to be a successful entrepreneur, you want to make sure that you're out there doing something that you love, because you'll spend your days, your nights thinking about it, talking about it, meeting people, reading about it. Everything will be around that, right?
Yeah.
You better look for something that you love, something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And without that passion, I don't think anybody can be successful. You'll only reach a certain level if you'll do something in order to pay the bills. Now, we go through a period of time where we're on our business path, and we found what we love and we're passionate about it, and we feel the urge to go out and do it. And many times, you got to deal with what you got to deal with, right? You got to eventually
Yeah.
put food on the table. And then you'll reach a certain point in time, and hopefully you'll be in a place where you can choose who you work with and how you conduct business, and who you choose to negotiate or to sell or to buy from, and stuff like that. But along the way, you'll meet many many different characters, right? You'll learn who you like to spend more time with, and who could be a great person or great partners, and who may not be a good fit. So don't be overly concerned about that, right? That just make sure that you're true to your own self. And I think these are kind of like the key elements. To be passionate about it. Without passion, nothing will work. You'll reach mediocrity without passion. You got to be very passionate about it. You got to be very focused on what you're doing. Stay on the elements. Stay on the road. Always learn. Always be inquisitive. And as we
Yeah.
said, work hard. Right? There's no shortcuts. The road is the road. The destination is the destination. The final achievement of the destination is not the end all be all. It's the way you conduct yourself along the way, and how much fun you have. Try to have fun with it too. Stressful enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'll add two things to that, which I think are really important. And you said this, I'm just going to say it in another way. It's really important to, I'm going to piggyback off of what you said, do what you love. It's really important to um, do something that fulfills you. And if you're not doing something that fulfills you, find the way to fulfillment. And sometimes that doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes that may take 5 years because you're in a position financially, you can't just leave, but you can
Hmm.
always think, build something and keep the vision, and keep everything alive, because I think the goal is to ultimately feel as in alignment as you can
Hmm.
with what you're doing. And so I appreciate everything you just shared. That was great. Um, let's do a quick speed round. So, what's a book or a TED talk, Joe, that's had a big impact on you?
I like Simon Sinek. I like how he conveys his information. I like everything about him. I like how pleasant it is to listen to. He just, he has it down to science. There's no
Yeah,
extras over there. He just gives it to you like it is. It makes you think. So, for me, Simon Sinek, I like many conversations. I listen to a lot of tech. Simon is great.
yeah, I love Simon. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Good name. Good name in Hebrew, in my language. My parents' language is Shem Tov. Good name. Maintain a good reputation.
I love Shem Tov. All right, good. I love it. Good. Um, uh, little Ima Abba advice goes a long way. I like that. Finish this sentence. One thing everybody can do today to start on their path to zoom in on the one thing that's the most important for them that's being ignored is.
Make sure you're happy.
It's great.
Understand yourself from level of happiness. I'm doing a task right now. How do I feel about it? Does it make me happy? Am I frustrated? Am I pissed off? What's my feeling associated with this task and why?
It's great. Joe, tell
Connect to
everybody.
your, connect to your
Yeah,
happiness. Connect to do things that makes you happy.
yeah, I love it. Tell everybody, Joe, who your ideal clients are and how they can connect with you.
So we are capital managers, John. So as you mentioned, we built a fantastic portfolio. We're essentially teamed up with best-in-class developers and best-in-class operators to build an amazing, amazing portfolio. We invest in real estate across the capital stack. So we place capital out as joint venture partners, as preferred equity positions, or as structured debt positions. Our most amazing client will be individuals that are looking to invest in real estate and want to team up with us and want to place capital and are willing to take the various levels of risk associated with this type of investment. Low level risk, stretch senior positions or debt structures. A bit of a higher level risk will be preferred equity, and of course, common equity will pay the highest, but will take a little bit of a higher level of risk. I'm talking a lot about risk, but I also want to mention that since inceptions and throughout my career, we have absolutely zero losses. My perfect client will be somebody who wants to place capital with us, who wants to invest with us, and willing to take on the understanding that we are doing what we're doing for many, many years, and we're probably great partners for real estate investors.
Great.
And so both on the institutional side, personal side, we're looking for expansion of our ability to invest more and expand our capital.
I love it. Joe, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. I love this talk. Think community, I always like to extract at least one thing, as a business coach who works with successful people who are stuck, I get them unstuck. What I love about this podcast, Joe, is that I get to talk to people all over the globe who are in alignment with my mission to help people get unstuck. And you shared a ton of stuff. I just want to extract one thing,
Sure.
um, which is find your passion or be in your passion, and keep the evolution and the narrative of that path alive, because it's really important. um, Think community, I appreciate you tuning in. If anybody can benefit from Joe's words, please share with them. And if you want to reach out to Joe, Where's the best place for them to reach out to, Joe?
Possibly the best place will be my email, but I'll give my phone number as well. So my email is jb@astorrealtycapital.com, jb@astorrealtycapital.com, or reach our office 212-687-0777. And you can talk to Laura at extension 100. Ultimately, our website is also a good spot to leave a word, and we'll reach you back. And that's at astorrealtycapital.com.
That's great. And think community, you can get a hold of me at jondwoskin.com. Joe, this was great. Stay on for a minute, and we'll catch up a little bit more.
Jon.
Thanks, everybody.
Fantastic.
Thanks a ton.